To the second event in the Meredith Sport Management Speaker Series. We're delighted to continue this series, which brings prominent voices in sport management to campus, engaging students, faculty, and the broader community. I broke it. So tonight we have the privilege of welcoming Amber Steele, the Vice President of Global Sports Partnerships and Operations for Coca-Cola Company. Amber, your work at the intersection of sport and global brand partnerships has helped shape some of the most significant events in the world. We're honored to have you here and look forward to hearing your insights and experiences, which will no doubt inspire our students as they prepare to launch their own careers in sport management. I'd also like to extend sincere thanks to Tom Meredith, the class of 1973, whose leadership and vision have been instrumental in shaping this series. Tom, your commitment to Hartwick and sport management has created incredible opportunities for our students. Your belief in education, in mentorship, and real-world experience has brought this series to life, and we are excited to see it flourish under your name. You are indeed a great son of Hartwick College. And I want to recognize and thank Hartwick trustee Larry Miller, class of 1973, whose support has been instrumental in bringing this series to life. His generosity and leadership have made a lasting impact on the college and its students. Larry, your love for this place and your faith in the difference it can continue to make for future generations of students is inspiring to us all, and I thank you. I also want to thank our provost, Laurel Bongiorno, for her leadership that has really seen this program take off. And I want to thank Laurel for her leadership. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Kristen Jones for two reasons. One, she has done a great job working with our students, and two, today she is a very happy person as the UConn women won basketball's national championship. Go Huskies. For years, Hartwick has been home to an accomplished athletic program. The Meredith Sport Management Speaker Series is a natural extension of our mission to provide students with the knowledge, skills, professional connections necessary to thrive in the ever-evolving sport industry. With each installment of this series, we're bringing top-tier professionals to campus to share their expertise, creating meaningful opportunities for our students to engage with leaders in the industry, to hear their stories, and to hear their passion for their chosen field. This series is about fostering dialogue, broadening perspectives, and helping students explore the many possibilities within sport management. And I am thrilled that tonight's lecture includes Professor Ryan Sarasola, Executive Director of Athletics Paul Vecchio, and two of our wonderful students, Tatum Coddington and Cooper Francis. I'm very proud of you. So once again, thank you all for being here tonight, and it's now my privilege to turn the podium to Tom Meredith to introduce Amber Steele.
Thank you, President Mullen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and allow me to second welcome you to the, I hate saying this, the Meredith Sport Management Speaker Series. I can't get used to that, but Jim, continue. Thank you very much. Welcome also to those folks that might have missed our inaugural event on February 28th with Doug Logan. He was out of sight, fantastic, and we know Amber's going to be just as good tonight. I also want to welcome some of the students that maybe haven't been here before. I thank you all for coming. It's a full house again, and it sort of confirms our belief that this will be a series that we can continue for a long time. And again, as Jim mentioned, I thank somebody who's taken a first-hand approach and hands-on with this with our Provost, Laurel. Thank you very much for your time, and all the faculty and staff, Ryan and others who are going to be involved in this. And Laurel, since unfortunately you allowed me to be near a microphone for a little while tonight, I would like to offer a more eloquent but short thank you to the college for naming this series after me. It's honestly the greatest honor. I'm an event guy, as Amber will tell you. I'm a behind-the-scenes guy, so we don't get a lot of awards, but this is something that I will treasure for all of my days, and thank you for that. You've heard me say this many times, friends of mine, and for all you students here, if you can get to this point after Larry Miller and I have been coming here for 55 years, every good thing that's happened to me in my life, I came to this college. And I really mean it. It's the second love of my life. My wife knows that she shares this place with her after 48 years, and I just keep telling her that it's been 55 since I've been coming here, so she has to catch up. It's a special treat for me tonight to introduce you to Amber Steele, someone I've known for over 4 decades. Folks, I believe the Midwest, and particularly the Hoosier state of Indiana, and she is, of course, a native of Indiana, I believe Indiana is the conscience of America, and she typifies that to me. She might have a movie star name, Amber Steele, but she's the most successful behind-the-scenes female in American soccer, and certainly in international soccer the past 40 years. Legendary coach Jerry Yeagley, who won 6 Division I national soccer championships in Indiana, said it best: Amber Steele is the best non-player we ever had involved in our program at Indiana. I will tell you shortly in a teaching moment about my first meeting with Amber on the IU campus about 40 years ago, and how she acted and showed me, even at her young age, not much older than most of you in this room, that she was a person of honesty, principle, and class, words you don't sometimes connect with folks today. Those traits she displayed since the first time we worked together at this country's national governing body for soccer, the U.S. Soccer Federation. She and I worked in a 2-person department, and I quickly learned that I was much better dealing with the details behind the scenes and leaving this young lady with the interactions with humans and the folks that we really need to have it as part of our team when we were really, those were in the virgin days or the early days of the soccer in this country. She always got better results for us than I did, and she just knew how to connect and deal with people. It was natural for her, and this has always been the case. But she's no pushover. Don't BS her, because don't steamroll her, because that'll never happen. This gal knows what's going on. She's had a number of jobs in other sports, but she's now celebrating over, as Jim mentioned, 20 years as involvement in the most recognizable sport and brand in this country, Coca-Cola. As its VP of Head of Global Sports Partnerships and Operations, it's probably easier to track the number of countries she hasn't been to than the 120 plus that she's been to. And about this one, she's been an active participant and worked at 10 men's and women's soccer World Cups and 15 summer and winter Olympic Games. 25 of those events. We're lucky to get to one in our lives. We watch them on TV, but she's been to them. And that doesn't include the 3 times probably that she went to every one of those 25 for site surveys. So she's been a lot of places and been a lot of involvements in big-time sports. Now the teaching moment that has stayed with me since Amber showed me 10 minutes after I met her what kind of person she was and still is today. And she gave me permission to tell this personal story. But first, some context. I was 15 years her senior that day. It was her first real job opportunity out of college, and I was going to be her boss as she prepared to be an intern at U.S. Soccer in Colorado Springs with me. She was sidetracked from the beginning of her internship the year before, as we both know, that when she started, her father suggested that she should get a full physical. This is her first job, first time out of town and stuff, and she got a complete baseline physical. U.S. Soccer's leadership at that time thought so much of her that they asked her to come back a year later, since Amber and her father and other doctors found a serious medical issue as a result of that early physical. So I hadn't met her, but on a site survey that I was doing in Indianapolis, which is about 30 minutes from Bloomington, about 2 months before she started her internship, I went to see her. I think it was the first time in 9 months she'd been out of the house, and we took a short walk on the IU campus. She showed me around. So we combined walking and talking about her internship with personal questions so I could get to know her. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a good chance I'm going to get emotional, which I don't do very often, so bear with me here. I said, Amber, what do your mom and dad do for a living? She said, my mom's a school teacher and my dad's a doctor. So pay attention to Tom here, because he's going to be really stupid in about 10 seconds. Tom says, what kind of doctor is he? And she said, he's a chiropractor. Tom said, chiropractors, they're not doctors. Amber's fiery response 40 years ago, and it still hurts me. She's poking me in the chest, and she says, don't you ever talk about my father again, ever. That's when I knew that this young lady from Bloomington, Indiana, would always tell you what she believed, what was right, and she was going to defend that position to the best of her ability, and she's done it since the day I met her. And over the past 40 years, there is no one that I respect more than this young lady. Nobody. Ladies and gentlemen, Amber Steele.
All right, well, thank you so much, President Mullen and Tom Meredith there for opening these remarks. My name is Ryan Sarasola. I am an associate professor in the Department of Sociology, Criminology, and Human Services, and the chair of the department right now. I've been helping out with the sport management program this past year as we've been building it, helping out with some of the lecture series. Those of you who are majors and minors here have probably gotten emails from me, and it's been a village building this program. And I'm also the NCAA faculty athletic representative for Hartwick College as well. So my role here tonight is just to moderate the panel a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to the panel to introduce themselves here very briefly, and then we will hear directly from Amber Steele. And then we will have some questions for you that we'll go around and work through. But I'd like to turn it down there to you, Cooper, just to say who you are, and then we'll get going.
Evening, everyone. My name is Cooper Francis. I'm a senior here at Hartwick College. I'm a business administration major with a minor in sports management and finance, and I'm a part of Hartwick men's lacrosse team, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tatum Coddington, and I'm a senior sports management major, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Vecchio. I'm the executive director of athletics here at Hartwick College, and Amber, we're just delighted that you're here, and I would like a round of applause for our two students brave enough to be up here.
All right, so without any further ado, please, Amber, opening remarks here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it and very much appreciate being asked to speak today. First of all, as Tom mentioned, my first boss at U.S. Soccer, he really taught me a lot of the key fundamentals of sports management and sports marketing. So I'm thrilled to be here today to be able to talk about that. And I just wanted to say thank you too to President Mullen and Dr. Bongiorno, Laurel, just to say thank you, because everybody has been wonderful in welcoming me, and you guys go to a great school. It's just been wonderful to learn more about Hartwick. And for those of you who haven't decided yet, it's a great place, so you should think very hard. It's very good. So before we start with the questions, I just thought I would take a little bit of time and talk to you about my journey on how I got to where I am today. So I think it was mentioned before, I went to Indiana University, and I'm from Bloomington, where actually Indiana University was. So there wasn't a lot of choice when I went to school because, you know, you grew up as a Hoosier, you always wanted to be a Hoosier. So I wanted to go to IU. I didn't really know a lot about the university because my parents were not affiliated with the university, but I was somebody who went to the sporting events. But again, my parents had to like walk me to class you know, a couple weeks before it started because I had no idea anything about it. But one of the things I knew about IU was they have this great program called Student Athletic Board. And when I was there, it was kind of like a student leadership for athletics. And you would volunteer your freshman year. You could maybe be a manager your sophomore year. And then your junior and your senior year, you tried to be a director. And what you were able to do is kind of be in charge of a sport. And what that meant was they did things like I was in charge of getting volunteers to sell the programs. I was in charge of soccer my junior and senior year, and so we had a big tournament called the Adidas MetLife Soccer Tournament, so I had to help get the opposing teams hotels. I had to set up, you know, parties for the parents who those, you know, there was like a get-together after the tournament was over. I had to help coordinate the awards. So I really learned a lot about event planning and kind of sports marketing. I also had to like buy the media to promote the tournament. So it was a great opportunity to kind of get started with what I thought I wanted to do. So when I was in school, I had said from the very beginning, I want to work in sports, and I also want to travel the world. And what I was told was, you could be a flight attendant, or you could be a sportscaster. And I thought I was not going to be really good at either one of those. So I thought there's got to be something. But I was one of these kids that went to college and really had no idea what I wanted to do other than I wanted to be in sports and travel the world. And I was definitely someone who I had never left the United States until high school, where my parents, it was their 25th wedding anniversary, and we went to like St. Thomas, Puerto Rico. So I had never been to Europe, I had never been to Asia, I had not really traveled, but for some reason I kept telling myself, you gotta travel the world. So my aha moment was, I was super lucky because I was in the Student Athletic Board. Somebody in our Board of Trustees at IU was told that there was an internship at the US Olympic Committee, and would they recommend someone? So I was very fortunate. I was recommended for that internship. It was the summer of my junior year. I got paid no money, which was hard because when you think about your senior year, there's a lot of things that you know, you need to pay for, but I thought this would be a great opportunity, so I wanted to do it. So my parents were very supportive. I went to Colorado Springs, and for 3 months I worked for them. And that was my, as I said, my aha moment. I realized you could work for a sponsor, you could work for a federation, you could work for like an agent. There was all these jobs that I discovered working for US Soccer when I was so the US Olympic Committee assigned you to a sport. So I was again assigned soccer, so I worked for US Soccer. Tom was not there yet, but that was my summer of my junior year. So US Soccer promised to hire me when I graduated the next summer. That was in May. I was supposed to start in June, and US Soccer didn't get the funding to hire me. So I was one of these kids that was involved in every activity you could be involved in. I did everything I could to try to make sure I had a job. All my friends left and had a job, but I had to move home. I had to work at a clothing store that I'd worked in all through college, and I had to keep doing that because my job wasn't ready yet. It was very humbling, to be very honest, because all your friends have these cool, fun jobs. They're moving to Chicago or New York, and here I am still at home, and I don't have my job. And here's this kid who is doing everything possible to make sure that she's the one that got the job, and I'm at home. So U.S. Soccer promised to hire me in September. The money didn't come through. Hire me again in November. The money didn't go through. And I did interview for a lot of other jobs. And that's what I would love to teach you too. It's just so hard getting that first job. When I was in college, we were writing letters because you didn't have email yet. So you were cold calling. I was cold calling sports marketing agencies, or I was trying to find jobs through friends. And it was very, very hard. Nobody would ever call you back. There were so many times no one would ever respond to the letters that you sent. So it was very discouraging. I thought, what the heck am I going to do? U.S. Soccer finally came through. And they said, Amber, we have the money. And then as Tom mentioned, my father took an x-ray of me and found out that I had a lung tumor as big as a grapefruit. So my parents said, you can't go start your job because we got to get this sorted. So I spent a couple weeks doing all kinds of things. I finally had to have surgery where they removed 2/3 of my lung. Right after I got out of the hospital, the doctor said the quickest recovery ever, because I was so motivated I wanted to start my job. I called U.S. Soccer and they gave my job away. So I cried so hard, they thought they were going to put me back in the hospital because I couldn't breathe because I had just had my lung removed. But they said there's a gentleman who's going to be starting soon, and he has a job in the events team, so he might hire you. So you just heard this story where Tom hired me, which was wonderful. So it was great because that job was better than the job I was going to have. So you never know, when a door closes, another door could open. So I'm super grateful that I had that opportunity because, as I said, it was an opportunity for me to learn a lot. It was right before the FIFA World Cup in 1994. So we had to plan all of these games for the men's U.S. team to kind of practice and get ready for '94. So I learned a lot about ticketing and marketing and managing a stadium and managing matches. So it was really an amazing first job that I had the opportunity to. I then was kind of loaned, as we would say, to the 1994 organizing committee. So for 2 years we first lived in Colorado Springs, and then I had to move to Chicago, and then they moved me to LA so I could work for the 1994 organizing committee. And I was just talking to Cooper and Tatum. It was such an amazing job. I was like 23 years old. I was traveling with the U.S. men's team. We were on David Letterman. We were on all these talk shows. We were meeting the President of the United States because it was the U.S. team, so everybody wanted to be a part of them. So when the FIFA World Cup was over, I thought, what the heck am I going to do now? I mean, I'm 24. I had this amazing job. What job am I going to do? And it was very hard because you think, everybody said you'll never have a FIFA World Cup ever again, and you're thinking, darn, what am I going to do? So I went back to U.S. Soccer for a little bit, and then we started Major League Soccer. So I took the opportunity. I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I was employee number 2 for the Columbus Crew. And that job, again, when you first start a new league, I was the team administrator, which meant I had to take care of all the players and manage their travel and transfers and all those kind of things. I was marketing, in charge of all the sponsors, so anything in a sponsor's contract I had to help deliver, make sure they got their tickets and their hospitality. And I was in charge of the stadium. I had to do all the operations, which means, I had to do the script, the music, make sure everybody was there on time, the grass was ready. So those were my 3 jobs for Columbus Crew. During that time, I was very lucky. There was an all-star game, and I was in charge of the East team, and then there was someone in charge of the West team. And I reconnected with a bunch of people from FIFA who just happened to be at that game. And they said to me, would you ever be interested in coming to work for us in Switzerland? And I was like, great, that would be awesome. I would love to move to Switzerland, not really thinking what that would actually mean. And they said to me, well, do you speak French? And you will learn one of my non-talents is languages. I am terrible. I have traveled the world. I can order white wine in most places. But I'm just awful at, I've never had a talent. I've tried super hard, but I just am terrible at languages. So anyway, I said, no, I do not speak French. And they said, okay, well, unfortunately then we're not gonna hire you because we need someone who speaks French. Because the FIFA World Cup at that time was in France. So 2 months later, they called me back and they said, we didn't find anybody yet who speaks French, so would you mind coming over? And I said, great, here I come. So first of all, they took me to 2 touristy restaurants. I lived in Lucerne, Switzerland, which they speak German there. And again, remember, there's no cell phones, there's no Google Translate. So if you don't speak German and you need something, you're kind of out of luck if you don't speak German. But they took me to 2 restaurants that had English menus. So I thought, oh, I can do this. You know, it's easy to have English menus. That was the only 2 restaurants in the whole city that had English menus. But anyway, it was an amazing, wonderful experience. I learned so much about myself, because again, living in a foreign country by yourself, though you don't know the language, you have to learn to adapt and change and figure things out by yourself. But I started as the account manager for Budweiser, MasterCard, and Coca-Cola. So I was the only American, and so therefore they gave me the American sponsors. So it was wonderful. And a funny side note about that is I was low man on the totem pole, so I was the last one hired. So for all the good events, all the other account managers got to go. So match 1, which was in Paris, had France, all of the other account managers go, but match 2 was in Marseille later in the day, so that's where they stuck me. So Coca-Cola complained after the tournament was over. We do something called the after-action review, where we go through what worked and what didn't work. And they actually asked that I be fired because they said, she's never around. And thank goodness my bosses at the time at FIFA said, well, that was actually our fault because we stuck her in all the places that she shouldn't have been. She should have been with you in all the big matches, but since she was new, we stuck her at the old matches. So Coca-Cola, who hired me later on, tried to fire me when I first started. So that's super interesting. Actually, the man who asked that I be fired is the man who actually hired me. So it was super nice. So I started, as I said, as an account manager. And when I left, I was very privileged. I was in charge of all of marketing. I was in charge of all the sponsors. I had hospitality and licensing. Very big title. I was managing director of FIFA marketing. Was paid very well. But my mother came down with cancer and had, she had to have chemo, and it was far away from where we lived, so it was going to be difficult for my family. So I wanted to move back to the US to be able to be closer to my family to help them, and that's super nice. Coca-Cola knocked on my door and they said, would you like to come and work for us? So it was a great opportunity to come back and come closer. But the point of that story is to tell you I took a 50% pay cut, and I went from a super fancy title to just a normal title, which for me didn't mean anything, but there's a lot of people in the world that means a lot. So people who used to call me back would no longer call me back because I didn't have that title. But when I wanted to work for Coke too was I wanted to learn something new. So my whole career had been around soccer, and we call it football, but for soccer. So I was so excited for the opportunity to go work for Coca-Cola because I could work on the Olympics and some other sports. So I was hired to replace the man who tried to fire me before. He was retiring, and he was in charge of the Olympics and of football. But 2 months after I started with Coke, they did a reorg. And they came to me and they said, you got a choice. You can have football or you can have the Olympics. You got to decide. Which broke my heart because, again, I went there to try to learn something new. But the gentleman who I was going to work for after Tom, the man who hired me, was retiring, he was very passionate about the Olympics. So I knew for myself to be able to make more of an impact, I would have to stay with football because that's what I knew best. That's where I could give more value. And so I said, okay, I'll stick with football, but I really would love to learn something new. That's why I came here. So I was very fortunate. They gave me the MBA, and they gave me rugby. So it was 2 new properties that I could work on that was something new and different. And it was very nice. I also got to do we have a program called Future Host Country, which we take countries getting ready to put on the event. We bring them to an Olympics to kind of teach them. So they said, we'll let you be in charge of that program so then you can learn about the Olympics too. So that's what I did. So, and then in 2016, I was fortunate to then be able to take over the Olympics. So to explain a little bit about what I do, I kind of say I have 2 jobs. The first one is I deal on a day-to-day basis with what we call a rights holder. So that's a FIFA, that's a UEFA, they're in charge of European soccer. We have Special Olympics, the IOC or International Olympic Committee, a rugby, those type of things. I deal with those companies on a day-to-day basis to make sure that everything that we have in our contract is fulfilled. Or if we want to get a new right, or if we have an issue, that's what I do, is I go and talk to them about it. The second part of my job is I help train or educate the Coke market that's actually putting on the event. So for last year's Paris Olympics, I went all the time to Paris to teach Coke France what we need to do. And we always build a team in that market or country to help make sure that we have a group of people who are working on the event, and then we have a group of people who are continuing to work on the business, because that's what's important for us. We want to make sure that we still continue to sell Coca-Cola, and we're not selling the event. So, we're here to actually promote Coca-Cola. We're not here to promote a FIFA or the IOC. So it's kind of my job to make sure that country keeps focused and making sure that they still are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's a little bit about my journey. I've been super fortunate that jobs have kind of come up to me, or I've kind of thought, oh, that sounds fun. Maybe I'll go try that. I've never been one of those kids that has said, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to go do. Even today, if my boss were to say, like, what do you want to do in 5 years? I'm one of these people that takes every day at a time, and if the new opportunity were to come up and it sounds fun, then great, that sounds fun. That's what I think I will do. So it's okay if you don't know exactly what you want to do, because hopefully there'll be great opportunities that come up that you can take. And I will say too, one of my big learnings is to try to do something that you're passionate about. I absolutely, as you can tell, positively love what I do. I feel very fortunate to have the opportunities that I've had, and I really don't think it's work. People think our job is very glamorous. I'm gone a lot, so that means that you're away from your families, you miss weddings, you miss friends' parties. But I get to go to Italy for 3 weeks, but that's how I see it. There are a lot of people, like my neighbors think I'm crazy. They don't understand why I'm gone so much. But again, that's something that I really enjoy. So again, I feel like what I have is not really a job, because I really love what I do. And I just hope all of you are able to find that, because it doesn't make it then work anymore. It really is fun. And it's, I work with great people. So every day going to the office is an adventure. I don't have the type of job where you might have a to-do list. My to-do list changes minute by minute. It really does. When you come into the office, you have no idea something's going to happen, and then something happens. So, as an example, I was telling a story last night. We were at the FIFA World Cup in Brazil, and all of a sudden, a bunch of people wanted to start protesting the government. So we have a lot of programs that happen during a FIFA World Cup. Like, we choose the ball kids, we choose the kids that carry out a country flag. And I got a phone call as we were going to the stadium that there was tear gas from all of the police trying to get the protesters to get all the way. So all of our kids that were going in to perform were blocked, and half of them couldn't see because all the tear gas was now in their eyes. So I got the phone call on, what do we do? And we do all kinds of risk mitigation. I do all kinds of planning. I had not put down anything about tear gas and what do we do if they can't get in the stadium. So, you got to figure it out. You got to come up with a solution, and you got to move forward. So that's the fun part for me. But if you're somebody who doesn't like change and like to be challenged in different ways, it's definitely not a job for you.
Yeah, so yes, please, a little round of applause for the comment. All right, we are just about to turn it over to the panel for some questions, and I'll ask each of you to go in turn. But I did just want to say here, just in the moderator role, some of the things that jumped out to me about Amber Steele's talk here are some of the things that you might be facing in your own lives, like how do you get your foot into the door in these places, these internships and clubs, the things that Hartwick provides for you, especially in the sport management program internship-wise. These are great opportunities that you might not know how meaningful they are at this early stage, but they really are. And from the start of your story, they're just how humbled you must have felt right after college.
Yes.
How much work you put in, how you were the golden, you were all systems a go, and then setbacks happen. And then you might feel like that's the end, you know? But it's clearly not, you know? So that's just another thing that jumped out at me. And then just hearing about your job a little bit tonight and then last night at dinner, there's just so much that goes into it, so much we don't think about. All the details in event management and sport management. There are thousands of jobs out there that have to do with these detail orientation things, from tear gas to what type of chairs you have out on the stage tonight, you know? So those are all part of it. So I'd like to turn it over now to Cooper. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. So my first question, what are the different strategies that you use when it comes to pitching different sports leagues?
Great. Well, I will say it's pretty much changed over the years. Again, before, it really depends on what your goal is for that property. It could be, so in 2002 FIFA World Cup, Hyundai came to FIFA at the time and they said, you know, we want to become an international brand. So they sponsored the FIFA World Cup so they could have their name on the field boards, because then everybody said, well, what's Hyundai? So it really, you know, became this thing that you could then promote your brand. We really try to focus on what is going to help us, as we said, recruit more Coca-Cola drinkers. So what is a property that our target audience is going towards? You know, how can we share those special moments with them? So, you know, we do all kinds of research on what are the, again, our target audience, what do they enjoy, what's their passion points, you know, is it music, is it sports, is it gaming, what is it? And then we want to try to connect with them by using these assets to help, you know, become more associated with them.
So my first question for you is, looking ahead, how do you see the landscape of sports sponsorships and event marketing evolving?
Thank you. Again, I would say it's sports marketing and events have really changed. I think when we first started, a lot of people just decided, you know, there's a bottler for Coca-Cola who really likes rugby, so he says, I'm going to sponsor the rugby team. Now you can't really do that. You have to go through, I think everybody, there's so much pressure on making sure you get the right ROI. You have to put a lot of measures in place. So you have to kind of justify every single sponsorship. And again, I think sponsorships are different. I think a lot of people are trying to do a lot of content. So how can we do content capture? How can we get data on each person so we can communicate with them afterwards? So those are kind of the priorities that are today versus the priorities previously, which were, you know, how do I get my brand out there? Is there, you know, do I need signboards? Do I need a video? What can I do to get more branding? But now it's much more targeted. We really want to make sure that we are able to communicate directly with each person to be able to understand what they're looking for and what they want.
I wonder if you can speak to the importance of role models in general for young professionals as they're trying to find their way, and then particularly maybe any experiences that you'd like to share for role models that impacted your career, and then where do you find yourself in your career now in terms of trying to be perhaps role models for other young professionals?
I think role models have helped me a lot. As Tom said, I really only had one female boss, and that was when I was an intern. Every boss I've had since there has been male, which again is fine, but I've looked for a lot of women mentors who have helped me try to navigate, you know, just my career path. I have been the only female in almost all my meetings most of my life, which is fine, but it's sometimes you have to handle yourself a little bit differently if you're in that situation. So I've really sought out a lot of women who have been very senior in either event agencies or sporting good, sports industry, just to help me navigate that, to ask questions on how to handle yourself and how to do it. So I think mentors are very important. And I really love being a mentor for people of your age, just to kind of help answer questions. Because again, I think it was so helpful when I was there starting out that it's really been helpful. And I will give you a little bit of advice that not everybody loves, but something super easy. which I always say is be kind. I have had 2 or 3 times in my career that I have worked with someone and they have either been asked to leave, fired, or they've left the company and they've come back higher or even my boss. So if you're not kind to people, it can hurt you in the future. So I had one situation where a gentleman who was my boss left the company and several people would not return his phone call. I always returned his phone call. I always checked on him. And he came back 6 months later as number 2 within the company that I worked for. So he had a list of all the people who never called him back. And it was very difficult for a lot of people to get back in those favor. So you just never know. And again, it's a normal thing in life. You always should be nice. But really in your professional world, you have no idea. I have worked with people 20 or 30 years ago who've now come back in my life and somewhere else in your career. And if you're this huge jerk, they do not forget that. So I always say, really be nice and get the basics right. Show up on time. You know, be as professional as you can. Dress up at times when it's appropriate. I have my little list, hold on. Make sure you don't post anything. I was super lucky. I didn't have social media in college. But really be careful on what you post because some future boss is going to see that post. And I know you'll say, well, it's not a big deal. That was 10 years ago. But people still look. The great thing about you guys is you have LinkedIn, which really helps you kind of identify jobs and things. But let me tell you, every time I have someone reach out to me asking me for a job and stuff, I start Googling and seeing who is this person, where did this person work before, and all those social media posts come up. So try to be careful with that too. And really surround yourself with people who you aspire to be. There's a lot of people in this world, I call them Eeyores. It's never it's a gloomy day in their life. And that at times brings you down. So I really try hard to make sure that I have, and I'm not saying that so you have someone who tells you yes every day. That's not it. Somebody who's honest with you, but they're positive and they're helping you, encouraging you, and helping you get to that next level. So we don't need any Eeyores. We just need positive people with us.
I'll chime in here. Yes, all of these ideas here, this professionalism, the way that you comport yourself. We had a state trooper come to my criminology class just this past week as part of Hartwick's Industry Days. Same sort of messaging, same sort of idea, to show up, get the basics right, present yourself well, and that goes a long, long way.
First impressions go long, long way.
Yeah. I also really appreciated the idea that even today, Coca-Cola is striving for understanding the market even better. I don't know, but I would imagine the leading, so,
We are number 1.
Absolutely. And you're still pushing for, so never giving up on that, having that tenacity. I'm going to professorize it up a little bit here, and I'm going to throw you this question here, which is books, The idea here is there, a book that you've read in your past that has resonated with you in your experience, or maybe some ideas from different texts that you think are good to grapple with that young students these days might take heart to?
I'm not a good reader. So what I was going to say for that question was kind of what I just mentioned, that, getting the basics right is what I've kind of learned from a lot of the books that I've read about your career. Really finding something that's passionate about what you want. And what I would say too, which, sorry, it's not about the book, one of the things I wanted to mention too is, trying to volunteer for something that you're passionate about. A lot of people say to me like, oh, I really like baseball. How can I get in baseball? And if you can't find any jobs, let's say where I live, they have the Atlanta Braves. I mentioned to them, if you can't find a job with the Braves, can you try an agency that might work with the Braves? Or can you volunteer like at a Braves game? Because the more and more you interact with people in that organization, they're going to see your work, and then they're going to tell you, there could be jobs available. So it's really trying to network to try to get to the people who are working. So for me, it's very hard to hire someone at our organization, at the Coca-Cola Company, someone right out of college. But who we do hire is potentially somebody who works for an agency that's working for us on some activation. Let's say like the Final Four that we sponsor. There could be an agency that right now is doing a lot for us, and if there's a lot of people that we think are doing a great job, and I have a job available on my team, I might go to that agency and say, hey, I have this job available, would you recommend someone? So that's why trying to work closely with that organization that you might want to work with is a great opportunity to try to show, your work ethic, what you can do, and it's just a great opportunity to try to get your foot in the door.
Okay, so for my next question, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of your sponsorships when working with major sporting events?
So one thing that we like to do is really try hard for our country putting on the event to come up with legacies. So what do you want to achieve with this event? So the easiest example I can come up with was in France '98, what we call our incident rates. So when you would go to a soccer game in France, only 10% of the people in the stands would buy a Coca-Cola because it was usually flat, didn't taste good, it was warm, because people would pre-pour it. So they would buy like a liter Coke, they would get a little cup, and they would pour it. So in Coke France, they said to us, what we want to try to do is try to change the way we sell our products. So we came up with, in Europe, it's a 500 ml PET. So like something like this that we can hand to the consumer because it's going to be cold, it's going to be a great product because it's in the bottle, we just produced it, and we're going to hand that. And our incident rates then in Paris went up to 70 to 80%. So our sales, of course, increase because we can control the quality of the product. So that was a legacy that Coke France wanted. So how we measure today is we really have a bunch of objectives or legacies that we're trying to achieve, and we have very specific measurements. So another one could be on people. Maybe in a country like a France, we'll say, the people engagement. So the employees are not very happy about working maybe for Coke for some reason. Like they don't think we do enough for them, or they're frustrated with the plastic rules in France, so they want us to change something. So we have very specific measurements that we're trying to achieve by giving, surveys on what can we do to make you enjoy working here better. And we measure all of those after the tournament is over to make sure that we've tried to achieve those goals.
So my second question for you is, with Coca-Cola's legacy of sponsoring global events like FIFA and the Olympics, what strategies have you found most effective in fostering authentic connections between the brand and diverse audiences across the world?
Okay. That is a big goal. We always want to be authentic. Because I think you guys would all agree, if some kind of company comes and talks to you and they're coming from some abnormal psycho place, you're going to say, well, this is not what I thought they were all about. We really try to be authentic to our brand and what we're trying to do. And so I would just say, again, for a FIFA World Cup, we try to really show that we want to be a part of your life, what a football fan is. So you're the people that go to the pub, you sit down at the pub, with your family or with your friends, and you watch the game. So we just try to make sure that we're there for those special moments, and that's where we try to be authentic. We don't try to create moments that we know won't really happen and say, that's how we're going to do it. We try to be where we think that you will be, and authentic in that sense.
So I'm going to ad-lib this one a little bit because the original question was really about if you knew you were going to work in sports when you were at IU, and you answered that you said that was always going to be what you were going to do. But listening to you talk about all these challenges that you had at a young age, both physically with your health, but then also this uncertainty of, well, I thought I had a job, but maybe I don't have a job. I just wonder if you can speak, because the young people in the audience are certainly going to go through adversities of their own as they get out into the marketplace. what would you tell them? Like, how did you get through that? What were the things that allowed you to persevere through so much uncertainty, and just what that may have meant to you as you moved through the rest of your professional life, having all these sort of bumps in the road early in your career?
I think it's all really around your support group. I felt I was super lucky. You know, my parents, you know, you hear a lot of people now who say, you know, I told my kids as soon as they graduated from college, they're off. Do they have to find some place to live? And I was so lucky that my parents understood that this is the job I wanted. And they were great to not put pressure on me to accept another job. And that's really what we did. There was a job in Minnesota running a sports festival. And when I was an intern at US Soccer, we had to go there for a couple weeks and work on this sports festival. And it was fun and I enjoyed it. But when I put pen to paper and pros and cons like you do, I kept saying to my mom and dad, but I really want the US Soccer job. That's the job I really want. And so my parents they'd say, okay, well then let's wait for that US Soccer job. So I'm very grateful for that, because I think, and you know, they've just, I would tell you it is very hard. I am criticized today because I've stayed with Coca-Cola for 21 years. And a lot of people, even within Coke, will say to me like, so what do you do? And I tell them, and they're like, well, what'd you do before? I'm like, I pretty much did the same thing before. And they're like, well, why would you do that? And my answer is because I love it. But there's some people who think that because I've kind of stayed in the same job, I haven't done my self-service. I should have changed companies. I should have gotten a higher title. And, you know, during your career, you have to think about those things. And I thought about it. There was 2 or 3 times in my career that I had another job opportunity, but it meant moving to a New York or a LA, which was further from my family. And it just, at the time of my life, I just didn't think that that was something that I wanted to do. And again, to go back, I really loved what I did. So I made those conscious decisions to stay and to continue to do. So I could have had a fancier title, I could have had more money, but I might not have been able to travel all the places that I've traveled. I might not have worked with great people that I think I work with now. So those were the choices that I made. And so you just have to be very, you know, just make sure that you make the right decision for yourself, and hopefully you won't regret those. There's nothing that I, you know, regret. A lot of people have said to me like, oh, are you sad that you never married and you never had kids? And it was just the time of my life, I just didn't have that opportunity. So, you know, you have other opportunities. So, you know, you just have to continue to do your pros and cons and do what's best for you.
Yeah, thank you again, Amber, for that. I would say, you know, at Hartwick, with our idea of a life balance college, I can't think of a better way to think about life and balance and where you are in your career. It's very exciting. We're running out of our time here, so I just wanted to wrap it up, and I'll have one last question for you here at the end about, you know, any parting words. But so this is a really exciting field. This is stuff that you may not know about. I love hearing about, you know, we can hear about the big titles all day. We can hear about the cool countries that people go to all day. But I like hearing about the person who goes into the room to make sure that the soda's not flat. You know, like these are the logistical things that we don't think about that need to be happening. And so it's really exciting to hear about all of those elements that go into making a great event, or a great sporting event, or a popular culture event, anything like that. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Just anything else that you might wish to impart on this, you know, brave new world of young folk we got in front of us.
I will say one thing, which is something that Tom always taught me too that I haven't mentioned. You know, if you're a great leader, when you leave the job that you have, nobody notices. And that's not something that a lot of people want. When you leave a job, people say, oh my God, I miss her so much. She was so good, and the new person. But if you're a good leader, then when you disappear, the company or the job, everything still goes well. So just remember that. You try to leave things better than when you found it. So if you do leave and everything runs smoothly, that doesn't mean you did a bad job. That means you did a great job. And I don't think a lot of people ever think about that. I think that they want everybody to feel terrible that they left. But if you can leave it better, then that's even better. So thank you so much for taking this up, for me to have this opportunity to talk to you. Good luck. I think you guys are all do great. And again, follow your passion, because then it's not work anymore. It's just fun.
Amber, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to have you with us this weekend, and I know you're going to Kristen's class tomorrow. Some more students are going to get some interactions with Amber. Thank you to the panel. Great questions. It was very interesting. I was sitting here thinking, you know what, next year we're going to have an intern that supports this speaker series. So if any of you are interested, everything from there's food outside, to there's name tags on the tables, to there's itineraries, practice sessions, there's a lot that goes into a one.
Serve Coke, okay?
Yeah, and making sure we have all Coke products or the other brand. So I just want to say thank you to all coaches, faculty who got students here. Students, thank you for being here on Sunday night, and there's good food out in the lobby. So
Thank you all very much.